I was organizing family photos when my son threw them in the trash and said, "You're not family anymore, Mom. You're just an old burden waiting to die. We're done pretending to care." I pulled them out of the garbage. I walked to my car. The next morning, his entire office received the wedding photos, where they could clearly see who paid for everything, including his degree. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. I was sitting on the living room floor of my son's house, surrounded by photographs, 40 years of memories spread across the carpet. Brandon as a baby, gap-toothed and grinning. Brandon in his cap and gown at high school graduation. Brandon and his father Kenneth at a Bears game, both wearing matching jerseys. Brandon on his wedding day looking so handsome in his tuxedo. My late husband Kenneth was in so many of these photos. He died 5 years ago, cancer quick and brutal. And looking at his face still made my chest ache. I was organizing them carefully, sorting them into piles. I'd bought special photo albums, the nice archival kind, because I wanted to make memory books for my grandchildren. Maya was 10 now, Jordan was 8. They should know their family history. They should see their grandfather, even though they barely remembered him. They should see their father growing up. They should understand where they came from. I heard footsteps behind me. "Mom, what are you doing?" Brandon stood in the doorway, his wife Amber right behind him. He was looking at the photos spread across his expensive carpet with something like irritation on his face. "I'm making photo albums for Maya and Jordan," I said, smiling up at him, "so they can see their family history. Look, here's you at your Howard graduation, making a mess with this old junk?" Brandon interrupted. I blinked. "It's not junk, honey. These are family photos, memories." Amber stepped forward, her arms crossed. "Dorothy, those are just old pictures. Nobody wants to look at dusty photographs anymore. The kids have iPads. They don't need old-fashioned albums. But these are memories," I said, feeling something cold forming in my stomach. "Their grandfather Kenneth, their father growing up, our family." "Mom, just stop." Brandon's voice had an edge to it I'd never heard before. "Nobody cares about this stuff." Before I could respond, he bent down and started gathering up the photographs. All of them. His baby pictures, his graduation photos, his wedding album, photos of Kenneth holding him as a newborn. He walked toward the kitchen. I stood up, confused. "Brandon, what are you doing?" He opened the kitchen trash can, the large one already half full of garbage, and dumped all the photographs inside. Every single one. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. "Brandon," I finally gasped. "Those are family photos. Your wedding photos, your baby pictures. Pictures of your father." He turned to face me. His expression was cold. Completely cold. "You're not family anymore, Mom. My name is Dorothy Jackson, and before I tell you what I did next, before I tell you about the email that destroyed my son's career and went viral across the entire internet, you need to understand who I am and how I got to this moment. I'm 67 years old, born and raised on the south side of Chicago in a working-class neighborhood. My parents worked in factories, lived paycheck to paycheck, but they taught me the value of education and hard work. I met Kenneth Jackson when I was 23. He was 25, working as a teacher in Chicago public schools, dreaming of becoming a principal someday. We fell in love fast, got married within a year, and built a life together. We both worked in education our whole careers. Kenneth became a principal just like he dreamed. I became a school administrator. We weren't rich, teachers never are. But we were comfortable. We lived modestly, saved carefully, invested wisely. We had Brandon when I was 29. Our only child. Our miracle baby, we called him, because we'd tried for years before he came along. We poured everything into that boy. Everything. When he wanted to go to Howard University, we made it happen. Out-of-state tuition, room and board, books, expenses, we paid for all of it. Kenneth took on extra work as a consultant. I did summer programs for extra income. We didn't want Brandon to graduate with debt. 4 years at Howard, $120,000. Then Brandon wanted to get his MBA from Northwestern. Another 2 years, another $85,000 in tuition alone, plus living expenses, books, everything else. We paid for that too. Dipped into our retirement savings. Kenneth joked that we'd work until we were 80, but it was worth it to see our son succeed. Total for Brandon's education, $68,000. Then came the wedding. Brandon met Amber at some young professionals networking event. She came from money, her father was a doctor, her mother was a lawyer. Old black Chicago family with all the right connections. Jack and Jill. The links, the whole social circuit. Amber wanted a big wedding. A huge wedding, the kind that would impress her family's social circle. Brandon asked us if we could help. Just a little, Mom. I know you and Dad don't have a lot, but whatever you could contribute. We just received Kenneth's life insurance payout. He'd had a small policy through the school district. $150,000. We'd planned to use it to finally travel, maybe buy a little vacation place, secure our retirement. Instead, we paid for Brandon's wedding, the whole thing. Amber's family had promised to contribute, but when it came time to write checks, there was always some excuse. A bad investment quarter. Unexpected expenses. They'd help with the honeymoon instead. They never did. So Kenneth and I paid for everything. The Drake Hotel for the ceremony and reception, $25,000. Catering for 200 guests, $30,000. Photography and videography, $8,000, flowers and decorations, $7,000, a 12-piece band, $10,000, Amber's custom wedding gown, $5,000, everything else, invitations, favors, transportation, rehearsal dinner, another $10,000, total $85,000. I still remember Kenneth's face when we signed the final check. He was pale, but he smiled. Our boy's getting married. That's worth it. A year later, Kenneth was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He was gone within 6 months. In those final months, Brandon visited. Not often, he was busy with his new job, his new wife, his new life, but he came. He cried at the funeral. He gave a beautiful eulogy about what a great father Kenneth had been. Then he got busy with his career and I saw less and less of him. When Maya was born, I was there. Brandon and Amber needed help with the baby. I stayed with them for 3 weeks, cooking, cleaning, taking night shifts with the baby so they could sleep. When Jordan was born 2 years later, same thing, 3 weeks of helping, then back to my house. Over the years I'd visit regularly. Sunday dinners, holidays, babysitting when they needed it. I thought we were close. I thought we were family. I thought wrong. You're not family anymore, Mom. Brandon's words hung in the air like poison. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Couldn't process what I was hearing. What did you say? I finally whispered. You heard me. Brandon's voice was flat, emotionless. You're not family anymore. You're just an old burden waiting to die. We're done pretending to care. Amber stepped up beside him, nodding. We've been talking about this, Dorothy. You're always here, always calling, always wanting to see the kids. It's exhausting. We have our own lives, Brandon continued. Successful lives. We don't need you hovering around all the time reminding us of the past, of where we came from. I felt like I'd been slapped. I'm your mother. Those are your children. I'm their grandmother. And you've done your job, Brandon said coldly. You raised me, great. Now it's time to step back and let us live our lives without you constantly being in the way. We don't want you visiting anymore, Amber added. We don't want the Sunday calls. We don't want you watching the kids. We're done, Brandon. My voice was shaking. I don't understand. What did I do wrong? Amber laughed. Actually laughed. You exist, Dorothy. That's what you did wrong. Old people are just in the way. Brandon has a serious career to focus on. I have my social commitments. The kids have their activities and their friends. We don't have time to entertain some lonely old woman who can't accept that her usefulness is over. I looked at my son, really looked at him. This man I'd carried for 9 months. This boy I'd raised. Educated, supported, loved with everything I had. Brandon, is this really how you feel? He met my eyes without flinching. Yeah, Mom, it is. You need to accept reality. You're old, you're alone, Dad's dead, you're not needed anymore. Go home, and don't come back. We'll call you if we need something. But don't hold your breath. I stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down my face. Then I walked to the kitchen trash can. Reached into the garbage, past the coffee grounds, past the orange peels, past the remnants of their lunch, and pulled out the photographs. They were wet, stained, covered in garbage. I carefully pulled out every single one. Brandon's baby photos, sticky with what looked like syrup. His graduation pictures, soaked with coffee. His wedding photos with Amber, smeared with food waste. Photos of Kenneth holding his newborn son, damaged but salvageable. I wiped them off as best I could with paper towels. Put them carefully in my purse. Brandon and Amber stood there watching me. Neither one offered to help. Neither one said a word. I walked past them, out the front door to my car in their circular driveway, got in, closed the door, sat there shaking, then I drove home to my modest house in the old neighborhood where Kenneth and I had lived for 40 years. And I started planning. I spent that entire night at my kitchen table, carefully cleaning each photograph. I used distilled water and soft cloths, working gently to remove the garbage stains without damaging the photos themselves. Some were ruined beyond saving, but most were salvageable. As I worked, I looked at each photo. Really looked. Brandon's wedding photos. The massive event at the Drake Hotel. The elegant reception. Amber's designer gown. The 12-piece band. The elaborate floral arrangements. I remembered every single expense, because I'd paid for all of it. I went to my filing cabinet, the old metal one Kenneth and I had bought at an office supply store 30 years ago, and pulled out the folder labeled Brandon Wedding. Every receipt. Every invoice. Every payment confirmation. The Drake Hotel, $25,000 paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Premier Catering Services, $30,000 paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Bella Photography, $8,000 paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Exquisite Florals, $7,000 paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. The Groove Masters Band, $10,000 paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Chez Elegance Brudal, $5,000 for Amber's gown, paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Total wedding expenses $85,000. Every penny paid by us. I pulled out another folder. Brandon Education, Howard University tuition statements. 4 years, fall 2005 through spring 2009. Tuition $28,000 per year. Times 4 years $112,000. Room and board, $12,000 per year. Times 4 years $48,000. Books, supplies, fees. Approximately $2,500 per year. Times 4 years, $10,000. Total undergraduate, $170,000. Northwestern University Kellogg School of Management. MBA program, fall 2010 through spring 2012. Tuition, $65,000 per year. Times 2 years, $130,000. Living expenses, books, supplies approximately $15,000 per year. Times 2 years, $30,000. Total graduate school, $160,000. I pulled out more receipts. Brandon's first car after graduating from Northwestern, 2012 Honda Accord, $28,000. Paid by Dorothy Jackson. Brandon's security deposit and first month's rent for his first apartment, $5,000 paid by Dorothy Jackson. I added it all up on a piece of paper, my hand shaking as I wrote. Education, Howard. $170,000. Education, Northwestern MBA, $160,000. First car, $28,000. First apartment, $5,000. Wedding, $85,000. Total $48,000. $448,000. Kenneth and I had invested nearly $500,000 in our son's success. And he'd just called me an old burden waiting to die and thrown our family photos in the trash. I sat at that table until sunrise looking at those numbers. Then I made a decision. Brandon worked at Morrison & Associates, a prestigious consulting firm in downtown Chicago. He was a vice president there, made $250,000 a year, was very proud of his position. I knew this because he talked about it constantly. At family dinners, on the phone, whenever anyone would listen. I'm a VP at Morrison & Associates. It's one of the top consulting firms in the country. I worked very hard to get here. What Brandon didn't mention, what he actively hid, was how he got there. Over the years I'd heard him tell different versions of his background story to people. To colleagues at company events I'd attended. To Amber's friends and family. To people at church before he and Amber stopped going. The story was always the same. Brandon Jackson, the self-made man. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. I took out loans and paid my own way through business school. I built my career from scratch, starting from nothing. I believe in hard work and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. That's how I got where I am. Every single word was a lie, but it was the lie Brandon had built his professional identity on. The scrappy, self-made executive who'd overcome obstacles through sheer determination and hard work. His colleagues believed it. His boss believed it. The people who worked under him believed it. I'd never corrected the lie. I'd figured it was harmless. Who cares how he told his story, as long as he was successful and happy. But now, sitting at my kitchen table at 6 in the morning with 400 pages of receipts and documentation spread in front of me, I realized something. That lie was all Brandon had. His entire professional reputation was built on being self-made, on being the person who'd worked his way up from nothing. What would happen if people knew the truth? I turned on my computer. It took me 2 days to put it all together. First, I scanned every single photograph from Brandon's wedding. The ceremony at the Drake. The reception with 200 guests. The band. The flowers. Amber's gown. The cake. All of it. Then I did something I'd learned how to do from a tutorial on YouTube. I added captions to each photo. Photo of the Drake Hotel's ballroom, ceremony and reception venue. The Drake Hotel cost $25,000, paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Photo of the elegantly set tables. Catering for 200 guests. Premier catering services cost $30,000, paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Photo of Amber in her wedding gown. Custom bridal gown. Chaise Elegance bridal cost $5,000. Paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Photo of the band playing live 12-piece band. The Groove Masters cost $10,000, paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Photo of the elaborate floral arrangements. Flowers and decorations. Exquisite florals. Cost $7,000, paid in full by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. I went through every single wedding photo, adding captions with the exact cost and who paid. On the final page I added a summary. Total wedding cost $85,000, paid entirely by the groom's parents, Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. The bride's family, despite promises to contribute, paid. Then I created a second document. I called it The Education of Brandon Jackson. I scanned every tuition receipt, every payment confirmation from Howard, every statement from Northwestern, every housing payment, every book receipt I'd saved. I organized them chronologically with captions. Howard University, Fall 2005, tuition $28,000, paid by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson. Howard University, housing Fall 2005, cost $6,000, paid by Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson, and so on. For every semester for 6 years of higher education. At the end, another summary. Howard University 2005-2009, $170,000. Northwestern University MBA 2010-2012, $160,000. Total education investment $330,000. Paid entirely by Brandon's parents. Student loans taken out by Brandon. Then I created a third document. Brandon Jackson's start in life. Receipt for the 2012 Honda Accord, $28,000. First car after graduation, purchased by Dorothy Jackson. Receipt for the apartment security deposit $5,000. First apartment security deposit and first month's rent paid by Dorothy Jackson. Final summary document. Total family investment in Brandon Jackson's success. Education, $330,000. Wedding $85,000. First car $28,000. First apartment $5,000. Total fortune. At the bottom I wrote, this is the foundation that Brandon Jackson's self-made success was built on. Nearly $500,000 invested by his parents, Dorothy and Kenneth Jackson, who worked in education their entire careers, and lived modestly so their son could have opportunities they never had. Kenneth Jackson died of pancreatic cancer in 2016. On date, Brandon Jackson told his mother, "You're not family anymore, Mom. You're just an old burden waiting to die. We're done pretending to care." He then threw family photographs, including photos of his late father, into the garbage. This is the truth about Brandon Jackson's self-made success story. I saved everything as a PDF. Professional, clean, irrefutable. Then I had to figure out how to deliver it. I've never been particularly tech-savvy, but I know how to use Google. I searched for Morrison & Associates and found their website. Sleek, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a high-end consulting firm. I found their staff directory. Brandon's photo was there along with his title, Vice President, Strategic Operations. His boss was listed, Richard Morrison, founding partner. There were about 40 other people in Brandon's division, vice presidents, senior consultants, associates, all with their photos and titles listed. I clicked around and found that Morrison & Associates was very active on LinkedIn. Company page, employee profiles, regular posts about their work. I created a LinkedIn account. It took me 3 tries to figure out how to do it properly, but eventually I got it set up. Then I started looking at profiles. Richard Morrison, Brandon's boss. His profile showed he'd gone to Morehouse College, then Harvard Business School. He posted regularly about authentic leadership and building success through integrity. I noted his name. I looked at other senior people at the firm. They all had their education listed. Most had posted at some point about their backgrounds. Several had written articles about their career journeys. Many of them emphasized similar themes to Brandon: hard work, determination, overcoming obstacles. Then I found something interesting. On the company blog from 8 months ago there was a post titled, "Morrison & Associates VP Brandon Jackson speaks to young professionals about building success." I clicked on it. It was a summary of a talk Brandon had given at a local college's business program. The post included quotes. "I worked 3 jobs to put myself through undergrad. It wasn't easy, but it taught me the value of hard work and perseverance. I took out significant loans for business school. I'm still paying them off. But that investment in myself was worth it. Success isn't handed to you. You have to earn it. You have to be willing to make sacrifices and work harder than everyone else. I came from a modest background. My parents were teachers, good people, but they couldn't help me financially. I had to figure it out on my own." Every single sentence was a lie, and it was posted on the company website. The company had promoted this story. They'd celebrated Brandon as an example of their values. I took screenshots of the entire post. Then I went looking for email addresses. Morrison & Associates used a standard email format: first name, last name, morrisonassociates.com. I could see this from the Contact Us page, and from various press releases where employees were quoted. I made a list: Richard Morrison, morrisonassociates.com. All the VPs in Brandon's division. I found about 15 of them. The HR department, hr.morrisonassociates.com. The company's general information address, info@morrisonassociates.com. I also found something else. Morrison & Associates had an internal newsletter. It went out to all employees every Monday morning with company updates, employee announcements, and upcoming events. And according to the LinkedIn profiles of several employees, Monday mornings at 8 a.m. there was a senior staff meeting. Every VP attended to give updates on their projects and discuss firm business. It was Sunday night, 11 p.m. If I sent the email now, it would be sitting in boxes Monday morning. Everyone would see it before the 8 a.m. meeting. I opened my email and started composing. To richardmorrison.morrisonassociates.com and 40 close other addresses. Subject: Brandon Jackson. The truth about his self-made success story. Attachments: Brandon wedding album due p.et. Brandon education documentation due p.et. Brandon total investment due p.et. Dear Morrison & Associates team, my name is Dorothy Jackson. I am Brandon Jackson's mother. I'm writing to share some important context about my son's background and success, context that he has deliberately misrepresented to you, to clients, and in public forums. I want to be clear about why I'm sending this email. This is not about revenge, though I am deeply hurt. This is about truth. On date, my son invited me to his home. I was organizing family photographs to create memory albums for my grandchildren. These photos included pictures of Brandon as a child, his graduations, his wedding, and many photos of his late father, my husband Kenneth, who died of cancer 5 years ago. Brandon grabbed all of these photographs, every single one, and threw them in the garbage. He then said to me, "You're not family anymore, Mom. You're just an old burden waiting to die. We're done pretending to care." His wife Amber added that I was in the way, and that my usefulness was over. They told me to leave and never come back. I pulled those photographs out of the trash. They were covered in coffee grounds and food waste, and I left. Since then I have been thinking about the many times I've heard Brandon tell people that he is self-made, that he worked 3 jobs to pay for college, that he took out loans for business school, that he came from a modest background, and built his success from scratch. I've attached 3 PDF documents that tell a different story. Document 1 is Brandon's wedding album from 2013. You'll notice that each photograph has a caption showing the exact cost of that element of the wedding, and who paid for it. The total cost was $85,000. Every penny was paid by my late husband Kenneth and me. The bride's family paid nothing, despite their promises. Document 2 is documentation of Brandon's education expenses. He attended Howard University from 2005-2009, undergraduate, and Northwestern University from 2010-2012. MBA. The total cost was $330,000. Every penny was paid by Kenneth and me. Brandon took out $0 in student loans. Document 3 is a summary showing the total investment Kenneth and I made in Brandon's success, $448,000. This includes his education, his wedding, his first car after graduation, and his first apartment security deposit. We were proud to make this investment. We lived modestly our whole lives. We were both educators in Chicago public schools, so that our son could have opportunities we never had. We never asked for repayment. We never expected gratitude beyond basic respect. But we also never expected to be called a burden waiting to die, and to have our family memories thrown in the garbage. I'm sharing this information because I believe truth matters. I've seen Brandon's bio on your website. I've read his interview where he talks about working 3 jobs through college and taking out loans for business school. I've seen him positioned as an example of self-made success and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. None of it is true. I thought you should know. Brandon had advantages. He had parents who sacrificed everything to give him the best education possible. He had a fully funded wedding. He had a car and an apartment waiting for him when he graduated. He started his career with 0 debt. These were gifts we were happy to give. But they are not consistent with the image he's cultivated of himself. Kenneth died in 2016. He never lived to see his son call me a burden. He never knew that the son he loved and supported would someday throw photos of him in the trash. I'm 67 years old. I gave my son everything I had. He threw me away. I thought you should know who Brandon Jackson really is. Respectfully, Dorothy Jackson. I read the email 5 times, made small edits, checked the attachments to make sure they were all properly formatted. Then I moved my cursor to the send button. My hand was shaking. I thought about Brandon, the little boy I'd rocked to sleep, the teenager I'd helped with homework, the young man I'd hugged at his college graduation, tears streaming down both our faces, the man who'd called me a burden. I thought about Kenneth, how hard he'd worked, how much he'd sacrificed, how proud he'd been of Brandon, how heartbroken he would be to know what Brandon had become. I clicked send. The email whooshed out of my outbox. To Richard Morrison, Brandon's boss. To every VP in Brandon's division. To HR. To 75 plus people at Morrison & Associates. It was 11:07 p.m. on Sunday night. By Monday morning, everyone would know the truth. I closed my laptop and went to bed. I didn't sleep much. Monday morning, 7:30 a.m., I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee when my phone started ringing. It was a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. It rang again. Different number. I didn't answer. Text messages started coming in. Unknown numbers. Mrs. Jackson, this is a reporter from the Chicago Tribune. We'd like to speak with you about... I deleted it. Another text. Mrs. Jackson, this is Jennifer from Channel 7 News. We heard about your email to Morrison & Associates. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to talk to reporters. I didn't want my 15 minutes of fame. I just wanted Brandon's colleagues to know the truth about him. But apparently, someone at Morrison & Associates had leaked the email. I turned on my computer and did something I rarely did. I went on Twitter. The first thing I saw trending in Chicago. Brandon Jackson. I clicked on it. The tweets were everywhere. This Brandon Jackson story is wild. Mom paid for everything. He calls her a burden. She exposes him to his whole company. Brandon Jackson really told his mama she's waiting to die. Then she pulled out receipts for his whole fake self-made story. The way Brandon Jackson's mom attached itemized wedding costs to the email. Black moms don't play. Imagine being Brandon Jackson and having to go to work today after your whole office got a detailed breakdown of the $48K your parents spent on you. Brandon Jackson's story got me calling my mama right now to apologize for everything. There were hundreds of tweets. Thousands. Someone had screenshot my entire email and posted it. Someone else had posted pages from the wedding album PDF. The photos with price captions. The story had gone completely viral. I sat there stunned, watching it spread in real time. Then my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. A woman with a camera crew. I didn't answer. The doorbell rang again. I ignored it. My phone, still off, started buzzing with what I assumed were more messages. I went to my living room window and peeked through the curtains. There were 2 news vans on my street. 2 news vans. For me. A 67-year-old retired school administrator from the South Side. What had I done? I'd wanted Brandon's colleagues to know the truth. I'd wanted to puncture his false self-made image. I hadn't expected that. My landline rang. I'd forgotten I even had a landline. Kenneth had insisted on keeping it for emergencies. I answered without thinking. Mom? Brandon's voice was panicked, almost screaming. What did you do, Brandon? You sent an email to my entire office. With our wedding photos, with my college receipts. What were you thinking? I was thinking, I said quietly, that the truth should matter. The truth? You destroyed me. Everyone knows now. Everyone knows my parents paid for everything. My career is over. Your career was built on a lie. So what? Lots of people's parents help them. That doesn't mean you announce it to everyone. You didn't just accept help, Brandon. You lied about it. You told people you worked 3 jobs through college. You told people you took out loans. You built your entire professional image on being self-made, because that's what people respect. Nobody respects someone who had everything handed to them. We didn't hand you anything, I said, my voice rising. We gave you opportunities. We sacrificed for you, and you thanked us by calling me a burden and throwing photos of your dead father in the trash. I was angry. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every word. You and Amber have been planning this. You wanted me gone. Fine. Yes. We wanted you to back off. But this. His voice cracked. Mom, do you have any idea what you've done? My boss pulled me aside this morning. HR wants to meet with me. Everyone is talking. My phone is blowing up. This is everywhere. Twitter, LinkedIn, news websites. Everywhere. Good.
Good? How is this good?
Because now everyone knows who you really are. Not the image you created. The truth. I hate you, he said. I hate you for this. I know, I said. But I loved you. I loved you enough to give you everything I had. And you threw me away like garbage. Now you know how that feels. I hung up. The story exploded over the next few days. It was on every news site, every blog, every social media platform. Executive called mom a burden. She exposed his $448K self-made lie. Mother's revenge viral email destroys son's career after he threw family photos in trash. Brandon Jackson's mom sends receipts. Literally after he calls her waiting to die. The reactions were overwhelming. Most people were on my side, especially on Black Twitter, where the conversation became about ungrateful children, elder abuse and parents who sacrifice everything. My mama paid for my education too, and I tell everybody, Brandon Jackson is ungrateful trash. The disrespect of throwing photos of his dead father in the garbage. Dorothy Jackson showed restraint, only sending an email. Brandon Jackson told his mama she's waiting to die after she spent $438K on him. I hope he's waiting for a new job, but there were other voices too. What Brandon said was cruel, but this was a private family matter. Dorothy Jackson shouldn't have involved his workplace. Sending that email to 75+ people at his company was vindictive and could be considered harassment. Both of them are wrong. Brandon was cruel, but Dorothy weaponized his workplace against him. I didn't engage with any of it. I stayed in my house, curtains drawn, phone off, but I couldn't escape the consequences of what I'd done. Because apparently I'd done more than embarrass Brandon. I destroyed his career. On Wednesday, 3 days after I sent the email, I got a letter. It was from Morrison & Associates. Legal department. It was addressed to me, but it was clearly copied to Brandon as well. It laid out the findings of their investigation into ethical violations and misrepresentation by employee Brandon Jackson. The letter detailed several instances where Brandon had publicly misrepresented his background. Company blog post where he claimed to have worked 3 jobs through college. Presentation to university students where he claimed to have taken out significant loans for business school. Internal diversity talk where he spoke about overcoming financial obstacles and building success without family support. Multiple client presentations where he positioned himself as an example of bootstrapping and self-made success. The letter concluded, these statements are materially false and constitute misrepresentation of credentials and background. Such misrepresentation violates Morrison & Associates Code of Conduct, Section 4.2, Truthfulness and Integrity. Additionally, the treatment of your mother as described in her email and not disputed by you raises serious concerns about character and judgment. Effective immediately, Brandon Jackson's employment with Morrison & Associates is terminated for cause. He will receive 2 weeks severance pay and benefits continuation for 30 days. But he is not eligible for rehire. They fired him. I'd gotten my son fired. I sat at my kitchen table holding that letter, and for the first time since this all started, I felt something other than anger. Regret? Maybe guilt? A little. But mostly I felt like justice had been served. Brandon had built his career on a lie. He'd positioned himself as something he wasn't. He'd taken credit for overcoming obstacles that I had actually removed for him. And when I called him on it, when I revealed the truth, he lost everything he'd built on that false foundation. That wasn't my fault. That was his. Amber called me on Thursday. I turned my phone back on and it immediately started buzzing with messages. Most were from reporters or random numbers, but one was from Amber. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Dorothy. Her voice was ice cold. I hope you're happy. I'm not actually, but I'm at peace. At peace? You destroyed Brandon's career. He got fired. Because of you, because of himself. I corrected. He lied about his background, repeatedly, publicly. That's what got him fired. Lies that you exposed. You sent that email to destroy him. I sent that email to tell the truth. If the truth destroyed him, that's on him, not me. We have 2 children. How is Brandon supposed to support them now? The same way millions of other people support their children. He'll find another job. Not in Chicago. Everyone knows what happened. His reputation is destroyed. We're getting calls from reporters. I got disinvited from a charity gala. My mother is humiliated. Your mother should be humiliated, I said. She raised a daughter who thinks it's acceptable to tell a 67-year-old woman she's a burden waiting to die. You're vindictive and cruel. No, Amber. I'm a woman who gave her son everything and got thrown away like garbage. I'm a woman who decided that the truth mattered more than protecting someone who didn't protect me. Brandon wants to apologize. I don't want his apology. I want him to leave me alone. But I'm done, Amber. I gave Brandon everything I had. My money, my time, my love. He rejected all of it. Now he gets to live with his choices. Just like I have to live with mine. I hung up. The weeks that followed were strange. The viral story eventually died down, as viral stories do. Other scandals took over. Other outrages captured the internet's attention, but the consequences for Brandon continued. I heard through the grapevine old friends from church who knew Amber's family that Brandon was having trouble finding work. Everywhere he interviewed, the story came up. Aren't you the guy whose mom exposed him? He eventually took a job at a much smaller consulting firm. Significant pay cut. No VP title. Just a senior consultant position making about $120,000 a year. Less than half what he'd made at Morrison. Amber was furious about it. Apparently, the pay cut meant scaling back their lifestyle. Smaller house. Less expensive cars. Fewer country club memberships. Her social circle had mostly abandoned her. The Jack and Jill crowd didn't want to be associated with elder abuse and viral scandals. She'd lost her positions on charity boards. Their marriage was struggling. They were in counseling, but it wasn't going well. And the kids Maya and Jordan were asking questions. Why don't we see Grandma Dorothy anymore? Why are kids at school talking about Daddy being mean to Grandma? Can we call Grandma? I miss her. Brandon tried to reach out to me several times. Flowers. Cards. Long letters about how sorry he was. I never responded. Because I'd made a decision. I was done. Brandon had shown me exactly how he felt about me. He'd called me a burden. He'd thrown away 40 years of memories. He'd rejected his own father's legacy. I wasn't going to give him the chance to hurt me again. 6 months after I sent that email, I was invited to speak at a community event. The Southside Community Center, where I'd been volunteering for years, was hosting an event for seniors about financial planning and family relationships. They asked me to speak about protecting yourself and your legacy. I agreed. I stood in front of about 50 people, mostly black women in their 60s and 70s, and told my story. Not the viral version, not the scandal, but my real story, about Kenneth and me, about working in education, about saving carefully, about investing in our son's future, about watching him succeed and feeling proud, about being told I was a burden and having family photos thrown in the trash, about making the decision to tell the truth, even though I knew it would have consequences. I don't regret what I did. I told them. I regret that I had to do it. I regret that my son became someone who could treat me that way. But I don't regret exposing the truth. Because here's what I learned. Your worth is not determined by whether your children value you. Your legacy is not defined by whether they appreciate your sacrifices. My husband Kenneth and I built something good. We lived with integrity. We helped people. We gave our son every opportunity. What he did with those opportunities and what he did to us in return, that's on him. But what I do now, how I live the rest of my life, that's on me. After I spoke, a woman came up to me. She was about my age, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. She says I'm too needy, too demanding. I helped raise her kids while she built her career. Now she doesn't have time for me. I've been thinking about telling her friends what really happened, about how much I did for her. But I was afraid it would make me look bitter. You don't look bitter, I said. You look like someone who's tired of being treated poorly and is ready to stand up for yourself. Do it. Tell your truth. Let the consequences fall where they may. She hugged me. You're brave. No, I said. I'm just done being silent. That conversation led to something unexpected. I started getting calls from other mothers, other grandmothers, other women who'd been cast aside by ungrateful children. They wanted to talk, to share their stories, to figure out what to do. I started a small support group at the community center. Just a few women at first. We'd meet twice a month and talk about our experiences. The group grew. Within 3 months we had 25 regular members. We called ourselves the Truth Tellers. We were women who'd given everything to our children and been discarded, women who'd been called burdens, told we were in the way, told our usefulness was over, and we were done being silent about it. Some of the women in the group did what I did. They exposed the truth about what their children had said and done. They sent emails, made phone calls, told family members who'd been kept in the dark. Some took different approaches. They wrote letters, they set boundaries. They stopped providing free childcare and financial support. Some cut off contact entirely. We supported each other through all of it. And I realized something. I wasn't alone. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of women like me. Women who'd sacrificed everything for their children and been thrown away. Women who deserved better. I also did something else with the money Kenneth and I had saved. I established a scholarship fund, the Kenneth Jackson Education Fund. It provides scholarships to Black students in Chicago who've lost a parent, students like Brandon once was. Except these students would know exactly who helped them and why. Each scholarship is $25,000 per year, renewable for 4 years. Enough to make a real difference. The recipients have to meet certain requirements, maintain a 3.0 GPA, complete community service hours, and write an annual letter to the fund describing their educational journey and thanking their supporters. They have to acknowledge the help they receive. They have to express gratitude. They have to understand that success isn't built alone. In the first year I funded 4 scholarships, $100,000 per year, $400,000 over 4 years. It was almost exactly the amount Kenneth and I had spent on Brandon, but these students would appreciate it. They would acknowledge it. They would honor it. The first time I met the scholarship recipients, Keisha, Marcus, Jasmine and David, I cried. They were so grateful, so humble, so aware of what this opportunity meant. Mrs. Jackson, Keisha said, tears in her eyes, my daddy died when I was 16. I didn't think I'd be able to go to college. This scholarship, it's everything. You earned it. I told her, work hard, make the most of it, and remember success isn't about pretending you did it alone. It's about honoring those who helped you along the way. I will, she promised. I'll make you proud. And she did. They all did. A year after I sent that email, I got a letter from Brandon.
Not flowers this time, not a card.
A real, handwritten letter, 10 pages. In it he laid out everything. The pressure he'd felt to be successful, the shame he'd felt about coming from a modest background compared to Amber's family, the way he'd created the self-made story to feel better about himself, the way that story had become his identity to the point where he couldn't separate who he really was from who he'd pretended to be. He wrote about the day he threw the photos in the trash, about how he'd been stressed about work, about money, about keeping up appearances, about how I'd represented everything he was trying to escape from, his working-class roots, his ordinary background. He wrote, I wanted to be extraordinary so badly that I rejected the extraordinary people who made me possible. You and Dad weren't glamorous, or wealthy, or connected, but you were good, and you loved me, and you gave me everything. I threw that away because I was ashamed of where I came from. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. He wrote about losing his job, about the struggle to find work, about Amber blaming him, about their marriage falling apart, about his kids asking about me. Maya asks about you all the time. She wants to see you. She misses you. Jordan barely remembers you, and that breaks my heart. They should know their grandmother. They should know the woman who made everything I had possible. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. Not for me, for Maya and Jordan. They shouldn't lose their grandmother because their father is a fool. At the end of the letter he wrote, you were right to do what you did. I was living a lie. I was hurting you while taking credit for your sacrifices. You exposed the truth and I lost everything built on that lie. I deserved that. I'm building a new life now, a more honest one. I'm in therapy. Amber and I are probably getting divorced. I'm working at a job I didn't get by lying about my background. It's smaller, simpler, more honest, like you and Dad were. I wish I'd appreciated that when I had the chance. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't show it when it mattered. I read that letter 5 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't respond. I'm Dorothy Jackson. I'm 67 years old. A year and a half ago, I was organizing family photos when my son threw them in the trash. He said, "You're not family anymore, Mom. You're just an old burden waiting to die. We're done pretending to care." I pulled those photos out of the garbage. I walked to my car. The next morning, his entire office received wedding photos, where they could clearly see who paid for everything, including his degree, including his first car, including everything that made his self-made success possible. I sent documentation of $48,000 my late husband and I had invested in Brandon's life. The email went viral. Millions of people saw it. News outlets covered it. It became a national conversation about ungrateful children and elder abuse. Brandon lost his job. His reputation was destroyed. His marriage fell apart. His social circle abandoned him. He lost everything. And I found something. I found a community of women like me. Women who'd been discarded and were fighting back. I found a purpose in my scholarship fund, helping students who would appreciate the opportunity Brandon took for granted. I found peace in knowing I told the truth, even when it was costly. Brandon has written to me. He's apologized. He's asked for another chance. I haven't responded. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll let him back into my life. Let my grandchildren know me again, but not yet, because I've learned something important. Your worth is not determined by whether your children value you. Kenneth and I were good people. We worked hard. We sacrificed for our son. We gave him opportunities we never had. What he did with those opportunities and what he did to us, that's on him. But how I spend the rest of my life, that's on me. And I choose to spend it with people who value me, with women who understand what I've been through, with students who appreciate what it means to have help. I choose truth over comfort, dignity over family obligation, self-respect over unconditional forgiveness. Brandon called me a burden, but I'm not a burden. I'm a woman who gave everything and deserves better. I'm a woman who told the truth and changed the conversation about how we treat our elders. I'm a woman who turned pain into purpose. Brandon lost his job, his reputation, his false image of success. But I found myself, and I'm never going back to being someone's burden again. I'm Dorothy Jackson. I told the truth, and I'd do it again.